The Xbox 360 didn't just change gaming, it changed how we connect. It was a generation where HD gaming was born, where online gameplay became the norm, and when consoles became more than just another box under your TV. It shifted from solo to social, but it didn't all happen smoothly, and they brought accessories along for the ride. Small bits of plastic, headsets, wires and cables, and other add-ons that tried to solve problems the console wasn't quite ready for. Some of them became essential, and some of them slipped away quietly, never to be seen again. And some just exist as artifacts today as a reminder of a specific and significant time in gaming history. These are Xbox 360 accessories you've probably forgotten about and why they mattered at the time. Now we're going to start off with something that's not super unusual or super exciting, and that is the Xbox 360 memory card. It's actually quite hard to believe that the Xbox 360 actually utilised memory cards. These little units plugged into the front of the console, and they had either 64 megabytes, 256 megabytes, or if you were really rich, 512 megabytes of storage on them, which sounds ridiculously small for today's standards. However, that was enough to store your Xbox profile on there, save games, and even install a couple of demos onto the card. Now you're probably thinking, hang on a minute, didn't the Xbox 360 come with a hard drive? And yes, however, unlike its rival, the Sony PlayStation 3, Microsoft decided to include a detachable hard drive onto the top of Xbox 360 systems. Now this was either 20GB, 60GB or 120GB. However, Microsoft didn't include it in every single system. Instead, the cheaper models, which were called the Core or the Arcade at the time, didn't actually come with a hard drive on top. These were reserved for the more premium models, including the Premium and the Elite. Now all consoles did come with either 256 megabytes or 512 megabytes of internal storage. Now this memory card here is a 256 megabyte memory card, and to put it into perspective just how small or big this memory card is, this is 32 times bigger than the PlayStation 2 8 megabyte memory card. However, when you compare them to my Xbox Series X with a 1TB hard drive, this is 3,900 times smaller, which just shows how far technology has come in the last 20 years. Now, unlike today, games don't need massive downloads or massive room to install on. Instead, they were all on discs, just like behind me. So why get a memory card? Well, the main thing back then was that you could take this round to your friend's house. You could take your profile around, you could take your saved games around there, and you could pop it into their console and carry on where you left off at home. Of course, once hard drives became standard on all consoles, these things quickly disappeared. And today, they're mostly remembered as tiny white bits of plastic that are full of achievements, half-finished games, and old Xbox Live profiles. So next up, we're going to talk about this. That's right, this is the Xbox 360 wireless headset. And by today's standards, this thing was rough. So it clipped onto just one ear, a bit like out of a spy movie, or like one of those businessmen from the noughties who used to walk around talking on the phone down the high street. And despite it actually looking pretty cool, it somehow made you sound like he was talking on a walkie-talkie, buried amongst a pile of pillows. Now the battery life was pretty decent, the comfort was kind of questionable, but the audio quality, let's just say everyone in the party knew if you were wearing one of these. Now as far as I'm aware, this never actually came packaged with an Xbox 360 console. Instead, most consoles included the over-the-head headset with the 2 bits of grey foam and the extendable mic that came in front of your mouth. So this essentially was an extra and meant to be an upgrade, meant to be something better. Obviously its main selling point was the fact that this is wireless and the standard headset was wired. Now it's actually quite crazy looking back, thinking that even today we still use wired headsets, especially for myself. You know, both the Xbox Series X controller and the PlayStation 5 controller both still have mic inputs on them. Now that's unlike companies like Apple, who famously removed their aux cable input a long time ago, but clearly in gaming, wired headsets still are very common. Certainly for me, I use a wired headset on both my consoles these days. Now in a world of AirPods and wireless headsets, it's pretty remarkable that this thing didn't really take off, and that lots of people still use wired headsets even to this day. And I guess that's because, you know, this thing needed charging, for example. But despite all that, this thing was everywhere. Call of Duty lobbies, trash talking people on Halo. No matter where you were, what game you were playing, you could always hear someone's TV echoing or somebody using the wireless headset. This thing really defined some of the times I had on early Xbox Live. And honestly, that static-filled chaos is kind of quite nostalgic now. Now this next one was actually kind of genius and probably my favourite accessory on this list, and that is the Xbox 360 Chatpad. So even today, everybody knows how painful it is typing something on a console using a typical controller. And back in the late 90s, people were using their consoles for more than just gaming. They were using them to communicate online with other people. Parties became a thing, online messaging became a thing, and you could even get apps like MSN on your Xbox 360, which is what I used for a long period of time, because in our house we only had one computer and I had to share it with my sister, so I was only allowing it for like half an hour a night. So other than time on the computer, I used my Xbox 360 to chat to friends after school, using things like MSN and sending Xbox messages. So the Xbox 360 Chatpad clicked into the bottom of a controller just like this. Harder than I remembered. And it added a full QWERTY keyboard to the bottom of your controller. It made messaging faster, trash talking much easier, searching and typing anything else a lot more convenient, and the best thing, it was actually pretty comfy and didn't impact the controller's feel that much, which is especially important given the 360 had one of the best controllers ever made. Now sure, it made the controller a little bit heavier, but it didn't impact gameplay, and once you went back to a normal controller, you were reminded of the torture of not having the QWERTY keyboard to type on. So the QWERTY keyboard, in my opinion, was one of Microsoft's and Xbox's best ever accessories made. And to be honest, if they released one today for the Xbox Series X, I probably would buy it. I know that in today's day we can use our phones for Xbox Live, and if someone's messaging us, we use our phones. But there are still a lot of times when I've got to put a password in, for example, or search for a game. And the worst thing is adding a gift card code or a CD keys code and unlocking something on your console. So yeah, if this was still available, I probably still would buy one. And it's a bit of a shame that this didn't survive into newer generations of gaming. So next up, we are talking about the Xbox 360 Intercooler, the accessory that promised to fix one of Microsoft and Xbox's biggest problems, and that was overheating. So the Intercooler, like this, snapped onto the back of the console. It has a couple of fans on the back, and its primary aim was to cool the console down, preventing issues like the red ring of death. Sounds great, right? Well, no, actually. In reality, most of these intercoolers were really loud, poorly designed, and they actually made console faults worse, due to them having to be powered by the Xbox itself. Now, it's worth noting that these are not official Microsoft products. They aren't officially licensed. This one is by Thermostatic, and this is the one that I've kept since I had my 360 back in 2007. Still, the fact that this thing even existed says a lot about the reliability of the Xbox 360 and how fans and owners were just absolutely desperate to try anything that would help prevent their console from breaking. And honestly, the reason I got it was actually because I thought it made my Xbox 360 look pretty cool. You know, at the time I was fairly young, I was in upper school, and having this at the back of it, having memory cards stuck in the front, the hard drive on top, I just felt my console felt like it, well, it looked like it was all kind of souped up with all these accessories stuck to it. So that was the reason I got it. Obviously, this was a complete failure of an accessory. We've not seen them, as far as I'm aware, on consoles since the 360. And thankfully, we've not had any issues similar to the Red Ring of Death since the 360 era. So yeah, with little hope, people would bolt this jet engine onto the back of the 360 in the hope it would prevent it from breaking. Not every accessory was made for gamers. Some were built for movie nights and family occasions. So Scenic remotes like these were wireless remotes that were specifically designed for the Scenic games.
So raise the roof and crank up the fun with Scenic Movie Night. Available now on Xbox Live.
Essentially movie trivia quizzes that required fast answers. And let's be honest, they just completely ripped off the Buzz games that were out on the PlayStation. So each controller had these massive coloured buttons at the top which acted like buzzers, alongside the more regular A, B, X and Y buttons, and then the Xbox logo button, as well as start and select towards the bottom. You didn't need to know how to play games, you didn't actually need to know movies that well, and that was kind of the magic with these things. They were pick up and play, designed as party games, especially at events and parties where it could get everybody involved and it wasn't just a video game. But outside of seeing it, these had pretty much no other functionality. And as downloadable games and mobile devices became more and more popular and more people actually just had them and online became faster, accessories like these became completely pointless. So these Scene It controllers weren't quite a failure. I remember playing the games at the time and they were okay, but they were certainly tied to a very specific moment in time in the late 90s where these kind of accessories and these kind of games were all the hype. And today really they feel like a moment in time where Xbox was just trying to get non-gamers to play their system. So before we wrap up and move on to the final accessory, I've just got a few honourable mentions that need talking about quickly. The first being the Xbox 360 wireless network adapter. For early Xbox 360 owners, Wi-Fi wasn't actually built in, which is pretty mad given that most people consider the Xbox 360 to be like the launch of online gaming. So the wireless network adapter clipped onto the back of the console and acted as the bridge between Xbox 360 and Xbox Live. Also the Xbox 360 media remote. Before smart TVs and streaming sticks, the Xbox 360 was a serious media hub. The media remote was designed for DVDs, Netflix, media playback, turning the console into much more than just a video game console and making it almost like your home media player. And it really reinforced Microsoft's strategy at the time, which was that they wanted the Xbox to be at the centre of your entertainment setup. And there was the Xbox Live Vision camera. Long before Kinect, this enabled video chat, simple Notion-based features, and even face capture for gamer pictures. Most players barely used it, but it represented Microsoft's early interest in camera-based interactions years before Kinect finally came out. In hindsight, it feels like a forgotten accessory and more of a test and prototype as to what was to come further down the line. And now on to what I like to call the Xbox 360's little brother. For obvious reasons, it looks like a little Xbox 360. So for a brief moment in time, the 360 was involved in a format war. And the Xbox 360 HD DVD drive was introduced to play high-definition movies like this. Now, DVDs were still the most popular format to watch films on at the time, but Sony were backing Blu-ray and Microsoft decided to counter that and back HD DVDs, which came in these red cases. So this thing would plug into the back of your Xbox 360. It's got a drive on the front, just here. Now, unlike the PS3, which had Blu-ray player capability built into it, Microsoft chose a more modular approach. If you wanted HD movies, you needed to buy the disc drive, and if you didn't want to watch HD movies, you didn't have to buy the drive at all. And on paper, that made a lot of sense. Microsoft weren't paying to include this in the 360, which helped keep costs down and propelled Xbox onto, at least initially, selling more units than the PS3. It was really easy to set up, just plugs into the back. It was reliable and worked really well, and it allowed Xbox 360 owners to watch HD films at home. So why did it fail? Well, it wasn't actually the hardware's fault. The hardware was pretty good. It was more a timing issue. Most studios and retailers began to back Blu-ray more and more, which meant that HD DVDs quickly lost momentum, and a few years later were completely abandoned altogether. And that was it. Almost overnight, this thing became completely obsolete. But what's interesting is not that it failed, it's how and why it failed. Like a lot of Xbox 360 accessories, Microsoft was trying new things. They were trying to attract new customers throughout this generation, which led into the Xbox One. Not just the HD drive, but things like the camera and the Kinect later down the Xbox 360's life cycle. And this often led for Xbox to be vulnerable to change when change happened in the wider grand scheme of things. So today in 2026, nobody's playing Kinect at home. Nobody's picking up a HD drive and watching HD films. Well, except for people like me, I guess. But people are still playing Xbox 360s, people are still playing PS3s, and people are playing consoles even before those times. So I guess I see this less of as a mistake and more as a reminder that Xbox should just stick to gaming in the future. So yeah, there we have it, the Xbox 360 accessories that you might have forgotten about. And I guess what this shows is that this generation of gaming really was an experimental generation. And it also shows that the hardware couldn't keep up with how fast technology was changing during the late noughties. You know, we had to attach things like wireless adapters, memory cards, intercoolers to the base system just so essentially it would work with what the wider gaming world was doing. Now, some of these were failures and were never to be seen again, whereas other ones actually were pretty good, and some of them, like the camera for example, actually paved the way for new ideas and concepts in later consoles and in Microsoft's wider ecosystem. So that's all for today. If you do remember any of these accessories, please let me know it down in the comments. Please drop this video a like and subscribe to the channel for more gaming videos. And as always, keep gaming.